Welcome back to another session of CRC Music in the studio. I'm Professor Omari Tao, Professor of Vocal Music here at CRC, and today my guest is Soprano Carrie Hennessey, my friend and colleague, and I'm super excited to have her with us today on this special session. There she is looking snazzy in a red dress and a fancy chair. And she's a dynamic performer, really quite wonderful, and has performed all over this globe of ours in many different ways, and sings operatically, has taken on a number of different styles, and has really been seen as sort of this rising, how do you say it? I don't know. The soprano, doing all kinds of incredible work in our community, bridging the gap between professional singing and education, as well as a colleague of mine in an opera company that we started a few years ago. We'll talk a little bit about that too. And today we're gonna we inviting everyone to join us out in the community. But what we are normally do on Wednesdays at 3:30 is we have a session with our applied music students. I was going to say musical theater students. I don't know why, but our applied music students. I'm not going to do that right now. Our applied music students are our students at CRC who take private lessons. They have auditioned to be in the school. We have a number of music majors who have not auditioned to be part of this program, but we have some students, a limited number, who get to work on their individual instruments and voices. But today we invite Carrie to talk to us about performance anxiety, stage fright, all those different things, nervous self-consciousness, etc. I'm going to try to unshare my screen so that we can be on the screen here for a moment and talk and say hello and welcome and yay.
Yay!
So glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. Looking a little less fancy in a little less fancy chair.
Oh,
That's
I
okay.
love it. I think
It's my
it's great.
studio. The drums in the background. Yeah, the whole thing. The whole thing.
I love it. So Carrie, tell our community a little bit about who you are and where you're from and how you ended up here.
Right.
Here in this, not today, but in this world, in this
right.
place, as
the
a singer.
existential, right? The existential question we're not going to get to today. It's too much. Yeah. So I grew up in Minneapolis. Was born and raised in the Minneapolis area, and grew up in a very musical family. My mother was a piano teacher out of necessity. She grew up playing piano, but my father died when I was 4. And I'm the last of 8 kids, so she had to make some things happen. So I learned a lot of my ingenuity and entrepreneurship from watching her support this family after my father died. And he gave her a lot of resources when that wasn't the thing to do in that generation, where he didn't dole out sort of, here's your weekly allowance, wife. He's like, figure out how to balance the checkbook, So I learned a lot about how to control my own environment in certain ways when I can. And I think that has a lot to do with performance anxiety. So it's kind of interesting that I'm just kind of feeling through that. And I'm like, oh, the tools came very early. When you have to deal with something that comes up, it's actually about planning far ahead if you can. So I went through and I had a conductor in high school that said, oh my gosh, you really can sing your face off. I sang Let the Bright Seraphim with him, and he was a Baroque organist and harpsichordist, and so it was insane, the kinds of ornaments he gave me, and I'm like, okay. I had just bought Kathy Battle's Wynton Marsalis album and was like, my mind was blown. I thought, I grew up a choir singer. What do you mean I can sing opera? What does that even mean? That's a job? Cool. So I went to a college that wasn't... it wasn't a conservatory. It was a tiny little, kind of what UC Davis used to be, sort of it was kind of an ag school. But it was this little gem where you walk into the art hall, and there were like 9-foot Steinways everywhere, and you go, "What is happening?" It was this amazing liberal arts college that people from Oberlin and all sorts of different places went to sort of escape the big city. So I was trained in sort of this bubble where I didn't have a lot of competition. I had all the discovery. I was singing art song cycles that were written for tenor before it was cool, when it was like absolutely against the law in the singing world. I was just breaking all the rules before, they were okay to break. Because I had that flexibility and creativity, because I could give a full recital as a freshman. So an hour and 20 minutes was my full recital music. It was too much. My muchness is always too much. It hasn't stopped. I go, yeah, okay.
So for those of you who are just learning Carrie Hennessey's personality and her sort of thing, it's a lot of things, a lot of voice, and a lot of ingenuity, a lot of things. So that's really amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, and I was able to really explore a lot of things, and after taking 6 months of voice lessons, I was told by my teacher I should do the Metropolitan Opera auditions. I was joyfully just had a blast doing them.
Can you tell our audience, those who maybe are not familiar with it, and those who are, particularly our students who are not voice majors, we have instrumentalists as well as singers, what are the Metropolitan Opera Audition Council awardee? What is that?
Yeah, the Metropolitan Opera in New York has a young artists program, and they host district and regional and the national auditions. So they start off in these smaller areas, and they invite judges from all over the world to come and hear these young singers prepare 5 operatic arias, and you sing one and they choose another, and if you meet with them afterward and get counseling about how you did, and were your heels too high, was your dress too tight, was your Italian good enough, all of that kind of thing.
Right.
Anyway, but so they start off in the smaller areas, and I started off in Minneapolis, and then I won the smaller district audition, and I advanced to the regional, and then I had the director of the Lyric Opera of Chicago really take a liking to me, and he said, "Come and see me. Here's my card." And I thought, oh, he doesn't really mean it. I didn't know what that, I didn't even understand how, when somebody said that to you, that they meant like, next week, get in touch with me because I want you to be working with my people. I had no concept of that. So I had 2 years under my belt of kind of advancing in the regional auditions and having people tell me I was too young to go to New York, and sort of the prize is you get to perform on the Metropolitan Opera stage with the orchestra, and the winner becomes this young artist. You get to be in this amazing program and really hone your craft. And it's a workhorse sort of young artist program. Lots of hours, lots of days, lots of learning, but that was something that seemed really interesting to me. So as I was prepping for the 3rd year of that in a row, I had sort of a Me Too movement moment, where I had a friend of mine that was a close musical colleague take advantage of my vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And it's a gray area. I can't say that there was a lot of miscommunication, and I confronted him quite quickly and said, if this is how you're going to treat women, it's not going to bode well for you, and we will not be friends, but I will forgive you if you mend your ways. And he did exactly that over the years. But I was sort of left with this hole. And my teacher didn't tell me I wasn't ready. And I had an anxiety attack in front of thousands of people. And I quit singing.
Wow.
So, you want to talk about learning how to deal with anxiety? I wish I would have had this talk. I didn't understand that the emotions could get so big, and that there could be so it could be so fueled, and then it could be so out
Mhm.
of control so quickly. I just didn't have at 22 any concept of that, and that there was a
Right.
possibility I could have nurtured myself in a way to understand what I was going through. But I didn't have the mentor, even in my teacher, who was living vicariously through me. She wanted this career and she couldn't have it. So here I was on a platter. And she really didn't take the time to say, you're not ready and you shouldn't do these auditions. And we need to talk about what's going on because the technique
And
is falling
ready,
apart.
and ready is a lot of different
A
things
lot of different
layered
things.
on top of other things. And so this is really, it's already good. Everybody, I've some wows and things in the chat. People are like, ooh, I want to know. There
Is
are
a
so many
lot.
good things. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. But thank you. First of all, thank you so much for already peeling back some of the mystery behind the feelings that many of us deal with. I'm going to say us, and I know that our students are watching and they're thinking, I have feelings and thoughts, and I'm not sure about this, or I feel good about this, but not about that. And so I think it's so wonderful to have someone who is doing it or has been through it to sort of, like I said, peel back the mystery of that and say, yeah, a lot of us have to deal with these things. And it's really important that we say it out loud and talk about it so we know what's real, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad,
Yep.
what's strange, what's universal, etc. I want to take a quick detour from where you just spoke about, and I want to actually share with our audience a little bit of this sound. And of course, this is later, but the sound of what you were working with. And so I'm sharing the your I'm sharing your SoundCloud, which has a performance of Un Bel Di,
From 10
a
years
fat,
ago.
and it's fabulous, and with pianist Gregory Mason. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece that we're listening to?
This is from Madama Butterfly, and this is the moment. Well, she's in complete denial and is as talking to her her helper, her the lady in waiting, who's sort of helping her through, her servant woman Suzuki,
Mhm.
saying that she's been waiting 3 years for this man to come back, and she is describing most intimately exactly how she pictures the day to go, exactly when she sees him from afar, what she's going to do and how will she react. And she feels her heart fluttering, just waiting to hear him say her name.
This is her long lost husband who's gone away. This is yes, her long lost husband gone, and
Gone.
she's imagining his return. Yes. Those of you who are listening and here, welcome, welcome. Ask questions in the Q&A or put them in the chat. Make sure that when you're using the chat that you use panelists and attendees so that it goes to everyone if you want to make a comment. And so here we go. Let's take a listen to Un bel di from Madama Butterfly by Giacomo Puccini. I'm gonna I'm gonna mute you for a second too. All right, here we go.
ciglio del colle mi aspetto gran tempo e non mi pesa la lunga attesa. Chi sarà e come sarà giunto, che dirò, chiamerò butterfly alla lontana. Io senza dar risposta me ne starò nascosta un po' per ciglia e un po' per non morire primo incontro e quanto in vela chiamerò piccina moettina o letto di verbena i nomi che mi dava il suo venire. E tutto questo per te lo prometto, che te lo compro, io che ti
Me. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you unmute yourself so I can hear you speaking?
Yes.
Still making a sound here. I'll make that go away. Okay. And
And I need this to go away.
thank you. Wonderful. Wow, wow, wow. And it was just so people may not know this about me. I tell this to a few people. Well, there's no other place that I love to be more than sitting in an opera house, hearing the voices wash over me. Like, I love every kind of music. I'll do any kind of music. But there is something about a ginormous voice just pushing out over the sea and attacking you that way and washing over you. So, Rava, when you listen
Thank you.
back, 10 years ago? 10 years ago? Wow. I can attest that you still sound amazing and all that kind of stuff. And when you listen to yourself and you think about that, when you think about where you were then, it's just so. What do you think? What comes to mind?
I remember the night of this recording and being so terrified to lay these tracks down because I wasn't good enough. I must be an imposter because I hadn't been singing. I just hadn't been singing. And I needed to lay down some tracks in order to even get what were then the West Coast auditions. They wouldn't hear me unless they heard me first. And so there was this whole, why am I even doing this? Does anyone really want to hear this? Like, why am I putting myself through this? And I remember the night feeling completely terrified the entire night until there was something about Gregory Mason that
The
he,
piano.
the pianist, who had played, like his teacher played for Luciano Pavarotti. He was backstage at all of Leontine's recitals. So he was surrounded by these voices. And he looked at me and he said, "No, you have just no, I understand you've not been back long, you've not been training again long, but you have the thing. Just do the work, do what you do well, connect with the music, and understand that you have something really special here. Let's just have fun with it." And it was a late night, and Stephen Bingen recorded, and we were trying to go in between. We were at Westminster, and we were trying to go in between train. He knew when the train ran, so like he would tell us when the breaks were going to take place, and like when we needed to go, and how long was this track. So there was also this element of like there was no people talk about like their putting together like this is the exact ritual I do before every performance. It's not useful because then it gets thrown off by trains, and then what? Am I going to go into a full-blown anxiety attack because I've just spent all of this money? No, it was a matter of I had the right people around me. I took those moments to be absolutely silent and kind of go through maybe what I would do for a show day routine normally in those moments between tracks. So it was just
Right.
that whole listening to that brings me back to that night like that.
Like a diary moment. You go like, oh, and that made you
Ooh.
very well. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, it's very interesting because you're talking about all of these anxiety things and all of these anxiety creating, inducing things that you feel, the triggers. And and yet in the chat from the very beginning, I can feel the emotion over the voice. Beautiful, wow, brava, lovely. This is taking me, transporting me, all of these different things. Isn't it
Thanks, guys.
fascinating?
Sweet.
How, well, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of wow, 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 breathtaking, charged, all kinds of lovely things, and people are saying amazing things. There's applauding hands, etc. And so it's very interesting um, how we all navigate um, anxiety to a place where it is unrecognizable necessarily,
Right.
perhaps from an audience's point of view. Um, what has been the distance between the moments where you were doing the audition and the nervous breakdown that you or the break you said you were having a you didn't say nervous breakdown, you said nervous, what
I
did you
had an
say?
anxiety attack right on stage. I was singing an aria from Lucia di Lammermoor, and I cracked a note in front of 2,000 people, and I stopped singing and I grabbed my books off of the piano and I said, "Thank you very," I literally said to the judges with my books in hand, "Thank you very much." And I walked off stage and never set foot on a stage until 12 years later. I was a
Wow.
baby. And I was a
Mm,
baby. And they came running after me because they're like, "We already know what this voice is. What you gave us a complete understanding of what this voice is." And before the audition, I had gone to Chicago to the Lyric Opera much after he had given me his card. And I worked with a coach all day. He came in, looked me square in the eyes, and said, "This is not the singer I heard a year ago," and walked out. So Richard Perlman, the head of the Chicago Lyric Opera, just told me, "That's not who I heard." And that was that.
wow. Isn't that fascinating? So I'm hearing a lot of things. I'm hearing on the one hand, there's a question about personal value and worth and readiness, sort of a serious talk you have with yourself. And then there's also these questions about how leaders, educators can damage people. They can be unwelcoming, unhealthy,
Yes.
and particularly if you're, as you were saying, a baby not ready, that somehow the language can really get inside and affect you. And we're
Yes.
not all we're not all a we're not post Me Too, We're
Right.
not, and I don't know if we ever will be, but we're not in a time where this sort of woke nation idea where we can stand up for ourselves. There's all kind of, so much changes over time.
Right.
Um, Hearing these two dances happen, and some of the questions I think people are starting to pose to, and I know we have a conversation to get to a little in more detail about anxiety and what it is and all that kind of stuff. But is there a place or time when you sort of said, "Hey, this is what's going on. Like, I'm dealing with something that I need to face," or is it just like, "Oh, I'm just emotional and I just can't handle." I mean, obviously you came out with singing. So how did that
Right.
happen?
It was never I'm just emotional because I knew this very specific thing had triggered some very deep things.
Mm,
And it was just disheartening that I didn't have anyone ask me about it. And so I knew it was me. I was going to have to rebuild from a place of complete understanding of myself. And until then, I wasn't going to sing. If it wasn't something that absolutely moved me, and I'm at that place again, if it doesn't move me, I'm not doing it. So I
mm,
would I would give little concerts once in a while with my mother because she was my most favoritist accompanist, and we breathed together, and it was that special relationship. Other than that, I really didn't sing, just because this was all
locked up.
it
Yeah.
was locked up,
Either that
tight.
or it's locked up slash, the sort of the notion of your heart's in your throat, like that
Yep,
thing. Yeah,
yep,
it's up there and it's
yep.
nothing's getting through.
And just for the record, just us talking about it is making it tight.
I'm sitting here going, which we'll talk about too.
Yeah, right. But just to know that like anxiety doesn't overcoming isn't a thing. We have
And
to
those are some.
continue walking through.
Thank you. Those are some questions that already been posed, and so those of you who are asking that question. I'm so glad you said it because it is the truth, right? There isn't the overcoming it. You said, what did you just say? Walking
Walking
through, going,
through. And
walking through.
getting a true understanding of yourself so you can see it coming from a mile away. There are certain people I know I have to email that is going to turn me into an anxious ball. So I
Mm.
actually, if I have time, I make time to sort of prep myself, or I see them coming at a party that I didn't think they would be. Go, okay, I literally see you from a mile away. She's locking up, and then I have a choice of what do I do with that information versus like just getting kicked in the face and not know and feeling defeated because I didn't have any control over the situation. I had no agency in my reaction. I couldn't respond because there wasn't space. I That reaction is what's so rough.
So there is readiness. There is self-awareness. Like, I want to know. I'm going to take a quick detour,
Yep.
well, based on what you just said, but then come back to this notion of readiness. This is very Oprah, Ian Levan Zant moment. But I remember showing my
Okay.
age too. But there was a moment where there's a lady named Ian Levan Zant who's like a life coach, and she was Oprah Winfrey was going to make her into this big thing, and she was like, Oprah loved her, and for whatever reason they had a falling out, and Jan Levan Vamp disappeared and was like nowhere to be seen and persona non grata. And then they came back later because you know how Oprah is. It's like, I want to
Yep.
find out what happened between them. And Jan Levan said that I was not ready to receive it. You wanted to give me $1 million. You wanted to give me everything. I was not ready to receive it. I wanted it, but I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important that we sometimes have to go off and do the work. That's not even about skill set development.
Yep.
It's about personal. It's about life skills. We're
Mm-hmm.
telling. So I'm wagging my fingers at you kids, you students of mine who are not even kids. You're grown. But the notion is that you can't just be in the practice room. You've got to be working on developing your friendships, and finding out who you are and what kinds of music you like and what kinds of people you want to be around and what kinds of relationships you want to develop as a human being who then can inform the music you want to perform or decide the kind of music you want. Go ahead.
Please. No, yes, I'm just like, yes, I was so grateful to come back as a grown woman with 2 children that had been through some things, because that thing you hear in that aria is that. It has nothing,
Uh-huh.
just the song itself or the aria itself. If I didn't have that life to give it, it wouldn't have any life.
Right. Absolutely. And there are plenty of great artists in history who've said similar things. Like, really, unless you're living life, you're not going to know how to perform that piece. How are you going to inform this composer's piece when you're not even, when you're
You haven't done
stuck
anything.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, you haven't done anything. And that's not like you don't have to go off to the army and come back and everything. I mean, you can. That's a life experience too. But, walk around the block, meet someone, And one of the things that I know you're doing for fun is this little group called Rogue Music Project, where
Yeah.
you and me, look, I'm standing next to you. I'm so excited. We have put together an opera company called Rogue Music Project. It's really a rogue, it's an empire, I'd like to say, Rogue Arts and Media.
The
And you'll see there
empire.
to the left is Jennifer Reason and Kevin Doherty, who were guests a few weeks ago. They are the Capital Public Radio morning music hosts. And Sarah Fitch down to the far right is Kevin Doherty's wife, and she's a mezzo soprano slash soprano. She's fantastic. And so it's really great that we were able to get together. There's Kevin and Jennifer, who were with us last time, you may recall. There's all of us having a good time. And what you said about sort of making music that you enjoy is so very important. And we are lucky enough to be doing it with people that we also enjoy being around.
And
We have way too
trust.
much. And trust. We
Yeah.
have way too much. This is a picture of Carrie in epic mode. I love this picture so much.
Me too.
An operatic premiere we did earlier this year called Bones of Girls. And it's really, it was a great experience in which we performed and discussed throughout that piece, had the discussion of trauma on young people, a young girl in this fairy tale kind of atmosphere. It was a really creepy, weird, off-center fairy tale. And here's a picture of you in what opera is this?
La voix humaine.
That was man. The person is not exactly dealing with performance anxiety, but she's having a breakdown of sorts.
She's having a breakdown. But that allows me to explore openly. These kinds of roles really allow me to explore this topic kind of openly,
Yes.
which is exciting.
So, when you said sort of working through or walking through anxiety, some of the questions I'm seeing here, they're sort of like, what steps did you take to combat this? Before we get to that, can we have a little bit more formalized-ish kind of discussion about what performance anxiety is in your opinion, or what it is, how people, how we define it, cope with it? What are your thoughts on it itself?
It seems, I mean, it's tied to a lot of anxieties. We have a lot of anxieties in our lives. But when we think of this particular task, when we think about performance, when we sometimes even literally just think about it, it makes our heart go into our throat. It makes our hands sweat. It makes us like want to put off and procrastinate learning the music because, oh, well, I don't have to worry about it. And yet that's probably the biggest thing, is that when you feel sick to your stomach, there were some of the most famous performers, was it Franco Corelli, who had like obscene, this amazing operatic tenor. He would throw up every time he went off stage. And then finally he stopped singing because it was just too overwhelming, and there was his only way to walk through is to literally and it like, yikes, ouch. Yeah. So so it's really just the body getting unsettled, ungrounded, the mind sort of swirling, so you're not using the part of your brain that can actually help calm down. It's just the spin, the gerbil wheel is what I call it in my studio often. We got to get the hamster wheel, slow down, take a break, have a Mai Tai, get out of here. So we need to come up with getting more in the body in order to deal with this sort of mind taking over and creating worst case scenarios constantly, which has to do with us
I
being
same.
critiqued.
I use that sort of similar imagery to sort of out of the head and into the body, and we
Hmm.
start thinking tactical things that we can actually deal with it. So, I mean, there you just touched on this. You said that self consciousness or nervous anxiety can be triggered by anxiety itself, the very thought of it.
Hmm.
And you also earlier the sort of am I prepared, the sort of fear of the lack of preparation,
Hmm.
and that can be in a macro sense and also in the micro, like did I learn my words, like you know did I even learn this song and here I am singing
Hmm.
it in front of
Right.
and the or instrumentalists, the same sort of concept. Here I
Yep.
am, and I know the people out there watching, they know the piece better than I do or
Yep.
think they do,
Yep.
right?
And that
Um,
self-sabotage that can sometimes come when we're trying to prepare, or we get overwhelmed because I'll be honest, I was never told how to prepare, and it wasn't until I had to deal with
froze up for my screen. I don't know if you froze up for them, but tell me,
oh,
you were never told how to do.
I was never taught how to prepare a song thoroughly because I just picked music up quickly, which doesn't help you when you're in
Ah,
an anxious mode. It all it does is defeat you, because then you're not good enough, and gosh, you should just quit, because clearly you can't do the thing you've done before. And I had no tools to go, that's not true. Where do I start? Like, where is the starting point? And I think
ah,
with all anxiety, it's a one focus. Start somewhere. Somewhere.
yeah,
Not everywhere. One
I
thing.
love it.
One thing.
I love that because that definitely there is the focus, the idea of focus. Some people say, crossing your eyes helps you to calm down. There's that sort of thing in yoga, etc.
Yeah.
But the idea of centering the breath, we'll talk a little bit. We're going to get into that breath. I keep going to it. Um, but yes, this notion of preparation on many fronts. Where is the starting place? If we're going to prepare, we have to start from somewhere.
Hmm.
And for many of our students, they're running into the increasing sense of anxiety and nervousness because there wasn't any preparation.
Hmm.
Maybe they forgot, or maybe they didn't get the homework done, or maybe they didn't do as well in theory and sight reading, and they don't pick up music as quickly. So
Hmm.
you can start to see the distances develop between you and other students, other performers. And instead of seeing that as something that becomes self reflective, something you should work on for yourself, you see it in perspective with everyone else and thinking you're left behind. And anxiety now has gone through the roof.
Yep.
So, starting places, what can we do? What can we do to start, and where can we go? And with our sense of whatever it is that we're with our approaching music in particular, where's the starting place?
We should not start with the fun things. Stop starting with the fun things. Stop just singing things. Don't just sit and play things, because you're gonna run into a wall of you don't understand it. So I'm like with singers, I write in your translations. Instrumentalists, you better know what all the marking means. If they are in Italian or they are in German, look it up. Look it up. Write it down. What you mean by this? So it all starts with what's in front of me, actually.
Mm, yes.
And then, again, if it's a singer, speaking the text. What is this poetry? Looking up to see who wrote it. Where did it come from? Why did it come to me? How is it that it's here? And if you can't find all that information, make it up. After you wrote a translation, you make up your own story about whatever did happen. Because you have to connect with it when it comes right down to it. So it's a map to sort of start really inhabiting the entirety of the piece for the entirety of the artist. Like let's be whole people in this, instead of just I am going to do this motor skill. Why?
Right.
Uh,
Can I
so
just say, I just want to let all the singers know that I did not tell her to say those things. The things that I always say to you, I did not promise. That was her. She just came up with that.
this
And
is how I teach.
we just happened to agree. Yes.
That's why I'm here. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a
But
very
then,
expensive.
yeah, but then, so making sure to speak the text over and over and over ad nauseum so you really get an understanding of how it flows like a poem. I'm into and have for decades, well, the decade and 2 years, been really into like also, and thank you, Heidi Moss, who I know was out there a while ago, for sort of confirming for me that this was a good thing. Not just speaking the text poetically, but sort of speaking it in this sort of robotic way that really has a lot of resonance. So you get the flow of the text through your body in the way that you're going to need to breathe through it resonantly before you add anything.
Funny. I do this with my students, but I hadn't made that connection. Heidi is, if both of you don't know, Heidi Moss is a soprano educator, a scientist, and somewhere way down the list, she's our professor Kurt Erickson's wife. But of course, I'm sure he would say that. But
Yeah.
she is amazing, and brain science is the really great thing for her. And so this is wonderful. There's all this work. I mean, this work that has to be done that you're saying that has to be done in order to be one of the things that we use to combat performance
Yes.
anxiety.
Yes, because the more that you can inhabit on many, many different layers, the text and the music, instead of just as one jumbled ball, because that's what it feels like when we're in anxiety. None of it makes sense. We can't sort of ground ourselves in anything. If I'm having an anxiety moment and I know what the next one word is and I really say it or sing it, then suddenly my breath calms down and the rest comes out of me because I've prepared. That I learned
Yes.
the notes come so last. They are so last on my list and they have been for a decade. So to get that sort of confirmation that all of these ways that I've been putting things together are really the different parts of the brain that we need to sing and utilizing them all in their different way and not just the panic, the part, not just the
Mm.
part that has the access to the panic button, but all of the other parts and
And
getting it in the body.
so it sounds to me like there's a great deal of curiosity that you students have to have, that you creators have to have, you speakers, those of you who are not even musicians who are here watching,
Mm-hmm.
who speak in public, you have to have curiosity about the thing that it is you're executing. That means going to the library and reading more and whatever, and developing that skill, which is another skill on itself.
Yes, and I think another big part of the curiosity is a question that came up talking to a colleague is why am I looking away? Why am I
Mm.
procrastinating learning this part? Do I feel less than because it has a high note in it? Maybe, but then let's talk about how to learn it and that it needs to be first.
I'm laughing because I am. This is something that came up in a professional conversation just last week with someone, and we were talking, and I sort of grunted, and he goes, "What does that grunt mean?" And I was like, "Resistance. I'm looking away."
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Why are you looking away?"
Why?
And I was like, "Oh, I don't know."
So to be curious about that too and go, huh, this is where I'm at right now. I don't know why I'm so resistant to this, but maybe I should look at that seems to be holding me back. So maybe I should look into it.
Yeah. So I know that you have a couple of images that you wanted to share as well. I want to
Mm,
get to those,
yeah.
get to the end of our time because there are some questions, and I think we might have some good questions to that you can address. Um, um, there's a very awesome image that we were both exposed to recently that addresses this. Could you talk a little bit about? I'll get my screen put up here, but can you tell me about what this is and um, what it's about? How does it affect the conversation?
Yeah, I think so. Alan Thiessen just did this. He's a composer, a professor, a saxophone player that I met on Twitter, and actually he and his wife came and performed here a few years ago. This image really says a lot about where we are in our performance life and how we deal with anxiety. And if you look, where we need to perform is in the present, right now. Right now. If you are new to performing, you do not have access to the past or the future because this is just what you're doing right this second. And so there's no experience in evaluating yourself and others. There's no experience in dealing with the anticipation because all you know is what's happening right now. And so it's much more likely that as a new performer, that the performance anxiety is going to be strong and hard because you just don't have any information about yourself yet. And so the more that we do it, the more we can grow that evaluation and anticipation, so we can sort of go in and out of past and future even as we live in the present. I can definitely, in the middle of an aria or a song, if I'm approaching a note with maybe a little bit more heft than I need to, I can access times that I've fixed that in the practice room while I'm still absolutely present with the audience. And that just takes doing it.
Skills.
So I think it's skills.
Developed. Yeah, they're developed
Yes.
over time by repetition and practice, actually doing it.
Yes.
I love this image
Yep.
so much. I saw his
So
blog
great.
on this, and it was excellent. And it was so timely because I thought, oh my God, Carrie's going to come talk about this very subject. And
Yep.
this image, you can see there's what I love about it for use for our community watching is that there's motion. It's not static. And it respects the fact that we are human and our emotions are changing. And it goes back to that question of how do you get over the anxiety? You don't.
No.
But you move all around this axis, trying best to get back into the present, trying
Yes.
to get into the of this thing.
Yep.
So that is absolutely adore this so much.
Me too.
And I'll put his name in the chat too, so that you can look him up. He's a saxophonist.
Yep.
We've got a saxophonist in our program here who I think would really enjoy his work, and he's also a fantastic composer. So composition students, you want to check that out. Yes. So that image is beautiful and wonderful. And then there's another one you have here that you're sharing with us, and I'm not familiar with this image. Can you tell us about this?
So this is a breathing technique. This is something that I do before every audition. This is something I do before I meet with a new conductor. This is something I do before a first rehearsal. It is a breathing exercise that actually physically accesses the parasympathetic nervous system and slows down your heart rate. So when you feel that heart just flying like crazy, this is a great way to slow it down. And so it's breathing through the nose, and they call it square breathing because it's the same for each of the motions. So you breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, exhale through your mouth, all of it, all of it, all of it, all of it, and then hold it again for 4 counts. And when you open your mouth at the end and air comes in, suddenly everything has calmed down. And if not after the first pass, do it at the second.
Can we all do this together? Can we try this really quickly? I've had a good moment in our CRC music in the studio, but I want to try. Okay, so you folks at home, try it with us. Can you lead us?
Sure.
Carrie, in the square.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Great. So
I'm gonna here. I'll help us out, and let's make it.
Great.
Make it even bigger.
So I'll hold up fingers for each of the things. Are we ready?
You.
And here we go. We're going to breathe in and. And singers, that breath that was so inactive, that's what we like in singing.
I love it. I love it. And I think what I love about this is it's not even just for our performances. This is life, right? The world that we're living in right now is crazy. It is time to vote. It is time for the world is on
Mm-hmm.
fire in many places, on literally in California, and breathing is something that we forget to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, breathing deeply and managing that breath, managing the anxiety that's building up for everything else besides our performances,
Right, right,
right?
right, right. And we feel like our body is normal until we do a breath like that and go, oh, none of that was normal. Huh. I'm
What do
going
you
to
mean?
be
I haven't
curious about that.
right.
Yeah.
I have a private student that has been dealing with anxiety, and I had her deal with breathing, doing a similar kind of breath just throughout the day. I said, I want you to set your timer for every 20 minutes, stop, and you're going to check your breath.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like this. I think it's a little bit more specific, and I think that that can be really helpful to all of us
Mm-hmm.
as we sort of navigate these different things. I did want to ask you, because this sort of is a concept of mine, and I'm sorry, and my last question, I'll let everybody else
No, it's
ask
okay.
questions. But I had a question. I am of the mind that our anxiety, even though this sort of hyper self-awareness is the feelings and associate the tight stomach and things like that are because on some sort of animal level, our body, animal instinct level, our body is trying to protect us, warn us from some kind of danger,
Yes.
or physical
Yes.
or otherwise. Can you
Yes.
discuss it at all?
Yes. I don't think we should ever shame our anxiety. We should never shame our tension. The idea that we have tension in our body and we should just get rid of it. No, it serves an absolute purpose. There are things that were too tough for us to deal with, whether it's now or in the past, that our bodies have learned this is a protection mechanism. And I think shedding light gently and curiously is really the only way to access the walking through the anxiety. If
Mm,
we try to just release it all at once, it's going to be chaos and more anxious than it was before because it's too much too fast. And so I think about my journey of somebody said to me, what do you mean you worked on that technical thing for 8 years? And I said, you know what? It wasn't until a year ago that I was finally able to release the last bits of that tension for real. So 10 years, 12 years of working through and understanding my tongue tension, my jaw tension, my tension here. But it was more about, instead of shaming myself for not being able to release it, to just lovingly observe it.
I like that. Lovingly observe it. Someone wrote here, Alexis, there is beauty in our struggles.
Amen to that.
And I like
Mm-hmm.
that. Wonderful. Thank you. This is really wonderful, I think, to help put it in perspective. I like that you are a singer on the world stage and singing all over. We're because of those of you who don't know, Carrie was slated to perform, slighted by the virus, but
Yeah.
slated to perform Katia Kabanova with West Edge Opera this summer. And what were you supposed to do another show with them as well?
No, I was going to do At the Statue of Venus with Jake Heggie right afterward.
With Eggie, who is the composer, like, yeah, yeah, but there's all these wonderful, incredible things were slated to happen this year, and COVID just ruined a lot of it. Are you doing it again next year?
Yes. Yep. All
Fantastic.
all rescheduled. Yep.
All rescheduled, so it's still coming. You still have your chance to hear her, and it's really great. So before I show a last couple of few slides to let people know what's coming up next on our series, I wanted to open the floor to some questions. Some that have already been posed. Put them in the Q&A if you don't mind, and that will help me see them. So glad that all of you could be here. I see a lot of really wonderful names out there, and some that I recognize, some that I don't. But we're so glad you are here. Check us out. Question here. When did you, this is from Glenn, one of our music majors, a trombonist. Carrie, when did you finally emotionally know you had what the audience wanted. Was there a defining moment?
I was very little.
That is not what I was expecting to hear. Okay.
I was very young. I was probably in 8th grade. I was a really shy little kid. Yeah, super shy. Didn't want to talk to people. I was very introverted. My extrovert has come out, but I'm still very introverted in a lot of ways. But I was probably in 8th grade when I realized I could allow people to see. I was always a deep feeler. I could allow people to see that part of me without ever having to talk to them.
Mm.
And there was something so freeing in about 8th grade singing something at church where I felt that thing come through me. And there was a reaction, and it wasn't about me. It was about this connection that I had with the people in the room. And I was very, very young. And that was like, I never wanted to do this if it wasn't like that, which is why I ended up quitting, because I didn't want to lose that sense of communing.
Yeah.
Because for me, this is really communion, really sharing bits of myself in a really vulnerable way, and understanding that the audience has had experiences similar to what I'm expressing, and they really connect and hone in on that pretty quickly.
I love that. It's a very interesting thing because we grapple with that as educators. We also are grappling with this balance between the rigor of musicianship and skills development, and also trying to inspire passion in students. And there's only so much we can do. I mean, there's that curiosity thing where you have to kind
Hmm.
of find it, and also that balance that you have to have as a student. I have to be disciplined, but I also have to be passionate. And if I'm not passionate about this, maybe I shouldn't do this, but maybe I need to put these all in concert together to really
And
know.
see. Hmm.
Yeah. And so that's, I love that because it is, that very concept is so very right now. And we are literally changing our curriculum. I'm on the faculty senate. We are changing the way we think about what college is and how we inspire that in you and students. So
Love it.
thank you for that. A really great question here was, as a public, this is from Joseph, as a public figure, you are very outspoken about your vulnerability. Why do you think that is? And I think you might have touched on some of this.
Yeah, because I think for me that is my strength. And I think most humans, it is also their strength, but we don't always have the capacity or the license to allow that. And raising two kids, a young woman and a young man in these times, it's always been important for me to have them see that it can be both, and that you have to sort of play with the balance of, I don't need everybody to know all my business. However, I also don't want to put a bunch of shiny Instagram photos that aren't me. Somebody told me, some of your Instagram photos are not pretty. I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt today. That's where I was. And I wanted to
Ah,
show that this is what it is. Here I
you are
am.
not talking the Hollywood talk.
Right. This isn't, I don't want any extra sheen. We have enough of that in life. And my job is to, and I feel like my mission in this one life that I have is to connect deeply. And if I am not showing my vulnerability, that's not me being truthful then. And if I'm not being truthful in my work, it's not going to land.
There is a time and a place for inauthentic things. Fake food, fake clothes, fake music. There's, pop stuff, just like nonsense fluff. There's
Hmm.
a time and a place for that. And there are people who want to live in that, want to consume it and want to live in it. But there are
Hmm.
many, and I mean, this is what I as an instructor, I am open to you doing any of that. But where my heart is, where my strength is as an educator, is to help you find that thing that you're just talking about right now, is to
Mm-hmm.
help find vulnerability, that honest, authentic thing, that truth, that
Yes.
connection, poets and musicians and stuff, that universality. So, amen, sister. I
Yeah.
hear you. I absolutely love it. Um, I think that this was answered live already. Let me ask another question. Let's see. Mia asks, um, "Are you?" She's curious if you have had or have aspects of your voice you don't like when you hear it played back in recordings, and how you handle the anxiety of that flaw brings up. Do you find a way to accept it, or do you work harder on that aspect to achieve the sound you want? Mm.
So, my goal is never about a beautiful sound. It's never my goal. It's
Mhm.
not what I'm looking for. My goal is to be authentic to my mechanism, to be authentic to the story, and tell it. My first, and I think, and so when I hear myself back, yeah, are there some where I'm like, well, that was crazy. It's less about the sound and more about I didn't understand that text. That German was not clear. So no German speaker knows what I just said. And so I have those moments, and yes, I work on them. But also in that work, my tone gets better. It gets warmer. It gets clearer because I'm being more clear with my mechanism about what it needs to produce the sound. But I never think about the sound. I'm always thinking more about what am I saying? What is the story? What is the text? How does that move in my mechanism? What is my breath doing? And how can I honor this thing that I am housing in
Yeah.
order to hopefully move the story along, move somebody in the audience? And sometimes it requires sounding ugly, which I
Mm.
kind of adore doing. Some of my favorite singers, the first time I heard Maria Callas sing the end of Traviata, that is not pretty, nor should it be. She is dying.
Dying, right?
She's literally dying. And when I heard other singers do it and it was pretty, I was left meh. So sort of I
Oh,
think part of
so
that answer is because the people that moved me to the core when I was first introduced to this art form, they committed to the story. They committed to what they were doing versus how they were sounding, which then feels narcissistic to me. And I don't have any room to sort of live in a world of, oh, it's already sort of narcissistic what we do. We have to look internally all the time. When I hear myself back, I listen with sort of a critic's ear
yes.
and talk about that singer versus me. Oh,
Ah.
that singer made an interesting choice there. I wonder if that singer would do that again. I do the same with mirror work. That singer in the mirror is really doing weird things with her tongue right now, and I'm not sure why that singer is doing that right now. Maybe that singer wants to look at that. So sort
Mm.
of that
I
emotional disconnection from my voice and my thing when I record myself all the time, especially when I'm for this thing we have coming up. It's all in English and the text is thick and important. And if I'm not understood, I will be devastated. So I'm
yeah.
recording myself all the time. And do I hate it sometimes? Yes. But it's more about than changing my framework to what is that singer trying to say and how can that singer perhaps work differently in order to make that clearer? That was a
I
long
just hear
answer.
again. I'm hearing you. No, it's great though. I'm hearing there's work that has to be done, and you want to work with that voice, that person, whoever that is over there.
Mm-hmm.
I, we just sidetrack. Will you tell them what is this thing you're working on? Because I haven't told them about this thing we're working on. What is
Oh,
this thing that you're working
with the Rogue Music Project, we are recording at the Crocker Art Museum for FINAM, the Festival of New American Music. And I just talked with the composer of the piece that I'm preparing. She's in Warsaw, so it's fine. Whatever. Um, and it was this amazing conversation. And so the more that I know about the composer, and the more that I understand about the trans woman that wrote the poetry and her background, the more I feel absolutely obligated not to sound pretty, but to deliver the text as intended, because it's perfectly written, it's beautifully set, the poetry is ridiculous. And so I feel obligated to really even work harder and smarter so that I can enjoy and inhabit the text and the poetry, but so that the audience really gathers what's happening.
I think this is fantastic. Absolutely great. Ooh, sorry, I pressed the funky button here.
Story
Wonderful.
of our lives.
No, it's going to be. There's, oh gosh, my computer. But there's a lot of really wonderful things going to happen at this Crocker thing for Festival of New American Music. And for those of you who are looking at our calendar, you know that Festival of New American Music is also presenting something on our calendar here for our students on a Tuesday morning with string quartet. So there's a lot happening here at CRC. That's right, at Music at CRC. I hope you are on our social media and finding out what's going on. You need to know that. We have a number of questions here, and we'll keep you as long as we can't stay forever because I know we have
Yeah.
we have to go just for that thing.
But I have like 5 more minutes.
Fantastic. Let me give you maybe, let's see, then maybe one more. Actually, two quick questions. One is a quick one, and then I'll give you another. So Stephen asks, what musicians do you like to collaborate with the most? Pianists, other singers, full ensembles, or something else entirely? And I think that.
Yeah. The answer is yes. It's more about the who. Not the what, but do we connect? So putting this song cycle together with Jennifer Reason, she and I breathe together better than most pianist collaborators that I've ever worked with. And so if she asks me to do something, my answer is always yes. So there are certain collaborators that really energetically work best. I'm always interested. I love doing chamber music because they're so I'm so not asked all that often. So I love doing chamber music.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I have, well, then this is, I don't know if we want to end on this question, but this goes back to the picture we had of Bones of Girls. John asks, did your Me Too moment back in your early career help later in understanding things like, for instance, your performance in Bones of Girls, which dealt with trauma? Help with an interesting, but inform maybe?
Yeah, well, and sometimes help. Because those traumatic moments that start revealing themselves and start shedding light through this cathartic work, it can be a way of actually releasing them and sort of integrating them into the body in a way that you can utilize them to your strength instead of them always causing tension. There is something to be said for having a better understanding. And so sometimes the work helps the trauma release. Sometimes the trauma helps and informs the work. And it's a little bit of both. And I think it helped me understand the heroines of traditional opera are a mess. They are a mess. They're never smart enough. They're always crazy. And so there's way of reframing those things in productions too, and having conversations with the director to sort of say, is this really how we want her seen?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I'm going to leave you with one last question, and I'm wondering if some of these other questions, those of you, perhaps I can get them to you, Carrie, to answer another time. Would that be great?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. One question here is more broad, and I think you've touched on this, but this is, I think, kind of, I don't know. The question is, looking back, were there times that you're unsure that you were going to reach your musical goals? And if so, how did you deal with that, overcome that, if that's the word that people were using, right? What keeps you going whenever you start to lose confidence and doubt your ability?
That's a big one because that never goes away, just like anxiety doesn't go away. Somebody laughed at me and said, "You still doubt yourself?" If I don't, then I'm not asking questions.
Mm.
If I'm not asking questions, I should get a different job. If I have exhausted all of the questions involved in this particular life career, maybe it's time to look into something else. So every time I am having confidence issues or doubts, I lean on people around me. I definitely ask questions of those in the field. I know that when the virus struck and suddenly my calendar was empty, I suddenly thought, oh, well, maybe I'm not a singer. And there were 5 months that I didn't sing through this quarantine. I couldn't, I just couldn't. I had to explore a little bit more about my identity, as most of my spinning wheel of the career was most of what I was doing, being, living. And so it really helped me reevaluate in the doubt and in the confidence shatter what I really want.
Mm.
And then the other thing is just being playful when things come up and not to be afraid. Jump in and ask questions later has been my motto since I moved to California.
Jump
So
in, ask. Like,
I have said yes to so many things I should have said no to if it was logical. Have you sung Mahler's Fourth Symphony?
this
Do
rap
you,
made
do
me
you
very.
know Portuguese? You could sing Bachianas Brasileiras number 5. Yeah.
Oh,
No. But I had to know,
thought.
like, yeah, yeah. And then you gather the people that you need around you to support that. But the idea that for me, I needed to keep jumping in to see where's the line, and can I keep pushing the envelope, and is that still interesting to me, and do
Yes.
I still have something to offer? So when the
Mhm.
confidence gets shattered, reminding myself also what I have done in my career so far, what I have accomplished without going to a conservatory, what I the things that are truthful to my being from the core inside out,
Yes.
and then decide in this moment, maybe I am feeling not confident, and that's okay. Look at all of the other things I've accomplished. I need to sit with this a minute, and not to
Yeah.
react, but to
We'll work on.
respond.
I love it. I absolutely love it. No, this is really, really great. And thank you so much for this conversation
Well, thank
today.
you.
Guests, my audience, the participants, and you applied music majors, that you got something out of today's discussion, as well as the broader public. Thank you for coming and enjoying Carrie's words. I'm going to show a couple of more, just a couple of screen things here real quick. Of course, your lovely mug once more. Share that, and just to let people know that we have this is an ongoing series in which we've engaged with people in the public, and we're super excited to have all of these different people sharing their careers, sharing their stories, sharing these vulnerable moments, like Carrie did so beautifully today. This Friday, Kathy Apple, flutist, at noon.
Yes.
She is gonna our regular Friday noon time. Kathy is an incredible flutist who performs in Baroque, classical, avant-garde, any kind of style you can think of. She does it, and she's also a fitness guru. She's got spinning classes and yoga classes and different things, and she's going to talk about that whole body fitness, this awareness as an instrument, being a singer. I'm sorry, being a flutist, being a musician, and being a whole being, very much kind of the way we were talking today about taking care of your heart and your mind. And so you can grapple with all of that stuff. She's going to talk about the body and how that was all connected. It's all connected. So thank you again, Carrie. Thank you, thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you all.
we're going to. I hope that Gabriel. Thank you, Gabriel Rivera, who is our music department instructional assistant. He's been helping make all of this stuff happen. I hope we can get a copy of this chat so I can share it with Carrie and some of those questions that are here, because you got some really great feedback and a number of other questions that people have.
That's fabulous. Love, 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 love.
Wishing you the best. Where can we find out more about you as we want to find out? Where do we go?
CarrieHennessey.com. There's a website if you want to follow my shenanigans. The meds, the social meds. Silliness on Instagram stories generally, but you can find things like that are proper in the actual Instagram posts where I'm doing things. So yeah.
We will find you. We will follow you. Thank you so very much for doing that. At Music at CRC, those of you, make sure you're following our social media. Applied Music Majors, make sure that you're following the announcements and make sure that you have your Group B performances submitted pronto. Have them submitted an hour and a half ago. Thank you so much. See you all again very soon. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Stay here.